Good morning, guys, and welcome back to my channel, Callie's Kingdom. I hope you are having a great morning or great day or whenever you're watching. When I am starting this, it is just around 6:30. Yeah. So normally I wake up at 6:30, but today I have to come into work a little early because the person who's been helping me with my project for my internship is only going to be there. Well, it has to step out at 7:30 when I normally get there. So I just got ready, and I realized while I was getting ready, I had another story idea. Guys, why is this happening? I am editing my book, and I need to focus on editing right now, but I had another story idea. It's just the very, very bare bones. It actually happened I started a book, I had this book idea back winter quarter, because there's something big that happens at the end. Why is that what comes to me first? Okay, it seems like what comes to me first is like a big, twist. This isn't really a twist, it's just something that happens. A big twist, something that happens, some climactic moment, which is really cool because it means I can work up to that, but it also means that it's been taking me a little while to get to that spot right. And I had an idea, I didn't have the idea of much plot that led up to it, but I had the idea of 3 characters. And I think I have the idea for a 4th, but also I don't know if 4 is too many POVs to write from. But the character that I was talking about yesterday in one of the previous drafts of Project Crystal or Crystallize, I don't know why I went back to Project Crystal. Maybe because it was called that when I wrote it. But her name was Cypress, and I just had an idea for her to be in this book. Her personality and that name, obviously not the exact same person, but very similar, just picked up and placed in this book. It's really interesting that sometimes that happens. It has not happened a lot, but it definitely has happened with these drafts of Crystallize, where I pick out different characters and figure out which ones fit the story, and I had a feeling that maybe Cypress would fit this story, and it just made a POV that's really cool. Because, I don't know about you guys, but having an anti-hero, with the villain, but she's not gonna be entirely, villainous. She might be, honestly, have some sort of power, but was kidnapped by this villain, or, in control of the villain to, send her out on, missions or different things, or she might feel like she has to. It started out in The Crown of Darkness, the book I wrote with my friends, where my main character was very, very, anti-hero turned good guy. And I really explore that with one of my characters in Crystallized, Delana. I love Delana. Oh, she's so great. She's so fun to write from. She's my favorite POV to write from. I don't have favorite characters, but I kind of do. And Delana might be one of them. But anyway, so I just had the idea for Cypress to kind of be that trope, I guess you could say. Then there's the main character, which I think I named her Aurelia, or Ari, and I do really like that name, so I think Aurelia needs to stay. She has a guard, a bodyguard who's been with her since she was young, named Ezra, and Ezra's a girl. I just thought that was a really cool, strong fantasy name, and there's the at the end, so I thought it would be cool. I still don't know yet, but Ezra, and they've, grown up together, and Ezra has basically been told, all her life, if something ever happens to Ari, you need to put yourself in danger, and you need to die. So she's been growing up with this belief that she won't live very long, because she's going to sacrifice herself for her best friend, and she's going to die. So I think that is such an interesting concept to explore. And then there's also the love interest, which I need to figure out a name for him. I had a name, but I don't really love it right now. And I'm not sure if I want to do an enemies to lovers or a lovers to enemies, if that makes sense. Because his brother is going to be the big, evil guy of the book. So I am really excited for this. I don't even know what to call this. And I need to come up with some magic system for it. I need to come up with a world. All I have is the big ending and these 4 characters and I want to explore it more. So basically at the beginning of a story idea like this, I think I'm going to let this idea simmer in my head, and I'm going to like write down on a Google Doc different ideas, which is basically what I had done before when I had this story idea. I never started writing much of it. I wrote a little bit of dialogue between characters, and then I wrote like the ending, at least Aurelia's ending. I'm not sure if it would be all of the characters like ending, but this would like ending paragraph, ending chapter, you know, but that would at least be hers. So I'm very excited to have a new idea. And I don't even know what to call it. Project Ari right now, maybe. But I feel like that doesn't get across the vibes of all the other characters. And I need to explore more of the world. But I also had an idea this morning, that her parents, like, you know, parents are always dead in books. Like, what if hers dies, like, right at the beginning of the story, right on screen? So, that's going on. That's really awesome. So what I'm going to do is keep writing down these key ideas. Oh my gosh, why does this hair do this to me? It, like, kind of separates. Anyway, I'm going to start writing down these key ideas that I have for this story and start thinking about it in the background. So just let it, like, simmer in my brain. And then, when I'm done editing this book, and I have given it out to my beta readers, and I'm waiting for them to get back to me, then I'm thinking I can dive into this book. So, unless some inspiration really strikes me, I'm going to try to save actually writing it until then, and then just in spare little moments, I'm going to come back to you and update you on my ideas, on any, like, somewhat plotting I'm doing, because although I'm mostly, like, not a plotter, I'm mostly a pantser, there are some, like, little plotting things I do, especially at the beginning, where I'm like, okay, these are kind of where I want to hit, and then I don't really go up to how I get there. I also really want to create the setting, the world building, so stay tuned for all of that. Okay, so at work today, I had a bunch of ideas for my story. I was doing a lot of SolidWorks, which is like 3D modeling software, so my mind was kind of wandering when it was going easy. When it was, there were some parts where I had to really focus, and I was like, why is SolidWorks not doing what I want to? Anyway, but while I was doing that, my mind wandered, and I just kept thinking about the story, and I think I'm going to call it Project Crown for now, and I will get to that a little bit later. And I actually think, I know yesterday I just talked all about, was that yesterday? No, it was this morning. Was it this morning? No, it was yesterday. I know yesterday I talked all about how, oh, Cypress, she would be a perfect character for this. I actually think that I'm going to take her out again. I will find a place for her, I promise. But I have been really enjoying writing more from, like, 3 main point of views. I think 4 gets a little bit much, so I think I'm going to stick with Aurelia, Ezra, and I came up with a working name for the male, like, main character, Talon, spelled T-A-L-E-N, and I'm really liking that name. So at first, I liked it, and then I was like, wait, it kind of sounds like the Talon of an eagle, like, Talon. But seeing it, like, all written out, I like it. So I just, like, made a Google Doc where I wrote down, like, some info about each of the characters. I wrote down their internal conflict, which is the most important, and then just jotted down some other facts. I used to use, like, a character sheet, or I tried to use a character sheet before that, like, IBM has, which I think is helpful if you're a plotter. But for me, as a hamster, it just, like, gets very much, like, oh, I have to fill this all out, and then I just have to write down all the things. So I think the most important thing is knowing your character's internal conflict, or at least a vague idea of their internal conflict that you can take and run with. So I came up with that Aurelia, she wasn't supposed to be the one who was heir to the throne. She had an older brother who was. And her older brother, like, died years ago. I don't know exactly why. Actually, 2 years ago. I don't know exactly why, but I know that her bodyguard, Ezra, Ezra had an older brother too, and her older brother was protecting, Aurelia's brother, and he, like, failed to protect him. I don't exactly know because I had 2 different ideas. One idea, the bodyguards, if they're for a specific, like, heir to the throne or king, queen, if something happens to that heir to the throne, king or queen, then they are, like, executed, or they have to, like, take themselves out. But I feel like that's a little dark. So either that, or I don't want him to be actually dead. So either that happens, or he, like, ran away from shame and faked his death. So basically both Aurelia and Ezra think their brothers are dead, except Aurelia's actually is. So Aurelia feels like she's not good enough, and that's her internal conflict. That she always feels in the shadow of her dead brother. She feels like she shouldn't be the one taking the throne, that he would be much more better suited for this. She doesn't feel like she's meant to be the heir. So that's her internal conflict and what she's going through. Ezra's internal conflict is she believes that anything happens to Ari, it's her fault. She shouldn't have a life outside of being Ari's bodyguard. She should be looking after her at all times. If she has any fun or any like semblance of something else, like she feels so guilty. So I want her throughout this book to realize that she has a life outside of Aurelia. And the main plot twist that I was saying before, I don't know if I want to go through with it because, not plot twist, but main thing at the end, because it might mean the death of Aurelia. And I have written 500 words for this book, just like jotting things down. I don't want her to die. I don't want her to die. That's the main thing. Okay, my main idea for this book, I'll just tell you, is I've always wanted to write a book where the main character, like, dies in the end. That sounds kind of dark, but I just think it'd be so interesting to, like, have the main character die and then have all the side characters have to, like, figure out what to do now that she's dead and have her like sacrifice herself and actually have repercussions. Not like there's not actually repercussions because of it. So the only reason I'm saying this now is because I don't know if that's how it's gonna end. And that way you guys are still kind of on the edge of your seat if I ended up being able to create this book and publish it someday. Because even with 500 pages of this world, of this story, I love Ari so much. And I want her, I think for her internal conflict, she needs to take the throne, and she needs to see that she is good enough to be the queen, and that even though her brother would have been a great king, like, she can do it. And I think that needs to be the wrapping up of her story and her internal conflict, which is why I'm not debating this. Also, I don't want her to die. That's what's so hard. I get so invested in these characters, and I'm like, no, don't die. But also, I want this to end where Aurelia sacrifices herself for Ezra, so maybe she gets some kind of, like, injury, that she can't come back from. Maybe her, like, leg's gone, or an arm, or something. I don't know, I'm just throwing something out there. I need her to sacrifice herself for Ezra, and Ezra to have this realization of, like, I am worth being saved. My life is worth it, and my life is not just here to save Aurelia's. And I think that will be so impactful in such a big moment. And I know I'm giving away a lot here, but also, like, I don't even have it written down. And if people want to take these ideas, I mean, you can, but you're gonna know that it's not original and that it wasn't your own. But I also think people get inspiration from everywhere. So if you're inspired by these ideas, if you want to make a book where the main character dies at the end, go right ahead. Because I think that would be awesome, and I don't know if I can go through this for that. So, and then the other main character, Talon, his older brother is going to be the one who's taking things over, the villain. At least I think it's going to be his older brother. I still haven't figured out what happened to his parents, but I also had the idea for the first couple of chapters where I think it's going to start out at a ball, and it's going to be a ball in honor of Ari's, like, brother who died, like, 2 years ago. And if he was still alive, I think he would be turning 21, which is the time of this kingdom where they start the transition of power, where, like, if he was still alive, he would start to slowly transition to king, and then in a year or two, it would be his coronation. So it's, like, a big deal. So it's either his 2-year anniversary of his death, or his 21st birthday, or something of the sort like that. And Ari meets Talon. And he's from this country called Ravarin, or Ravarin, I don't know exactly how I want to pronounce it, which is across the sea. Countries outside of their, like, continent, or kingdoms outside of their continent, don't really trade. But they've gotten into, like, a little bit of trade, and she meets him, maybe this is their second time meeting, and they go off, and they're, like, talking and having a good time, and she's like, oh my gosh, he's kind of cute, and then all of a sudden there's chaos, where it's, like, the king and queen have died, or I think before this, he's, like, pulls out a knife, and he's, like, was basically sent to kill her while his brother kills the king and queen, and then he realizes that he can't do it, and he kind of has, like, the knife to her throat, and then Ezra comes in, and is, like, feeling guilty or something because she took a moment to talk to another guard and she's like, I should not be talking to you, I need to be looking after Ari or something. And then this happens. So already she's like, oh my gosh, I almost got Ari killed. Talon can't do it. He ends up like dropping the knife or something and like letting her go free and running away as like Ezra runs after him or something. And that's my idea for the opening scene. And I'm so excited. I feel like I'm just talking so much, but I mean, this is my new book idea video, so let's see. I also came up with some names of the continents, and I think that each of them will have like a different, there's 5 kingdoms on the continent that we're in, that Ari's from, and each of them have a different magical object. There's no magic other than this object, because the king and queen, something happened with magic years ago, blah, blah, blah. Hundreds of years ago, the king and queen gathered up all of the magic in the world and put them into these objects, so that way it couldn't go free. I don't exactly know. But Ari's kingdom has a crown. And her kingdom, I think, is going to be called Fallora. Like Fallora, and they're going to be mainly have like fields, crops, they're near a river, they're near the coastline. That's kind of their deal. There's also going to be Halan, which is a lake, like has a lake in the middle of their kingdom. They have a lot of fishing in the lake, they have hills, and they have a magic amulet. There's going to be Venery, which is very forested, they get a lot of wood, and they have a magic staff. Atalwa is around the Gulf, it's very tropical, and I think they're gonna have like a magic hairpiece or something. They're the last one who I thought of something for their magical object. And then Lendor. Lendor is built directly into the mountains, which I always thought would be really cool to have like a kingdom in a world that's built directly into the mountains. They have a lot of mines, they get a lot of coal, things like that, and they have a magic sword. And I think Lendor is where Ari's going to kind of escape to, because her aunt is going to be the queen of that kingdom. So they're going to like escape over there. And that's kind of all I have. I really need to figure out more what's going to happen. Like, maybe I should. Okay, I was originally going to have the villains steal the fake version of the crown. And then have them like have the real version. But maybe he steals the real version, but he can't really unlock the magic, because you can only unlock the magic if all of those items are together, and that's only like in an emergency when all of the kingdoms need to come together because they need to have everything there. So maybe she's trying to steal it back while he's trying to steal the other items and like attack the other items. So I don't know, but also I definitely think Talon's gonna be sent after Ari, and they're gonna have a little enemies to lovers arc. In my current book, I did kind of a lovers to enemies arc, which I think was really cool to turn that on its head. And I don't know if this is a little bit of a spoiler. It's just a trope. My character Delena, she starts out in a relationship, and she was originally on like the bad guy's side in my current book that I'm editing right now, Crystallize. And by the end, like he has totally turned against her, and it's so tragic to be like, I loved him, and then he's like attacking her. But I think it's a really cool way to turn that trope on its head. But this one's just gonna have the like normal trope, which I originally thought maybe some enemies delivers to enemies, but no, I think Talon's gonna like turn good and realize everything. So I am very excited for this story, and I think I have a really good start to it. So thank you so much for coming along with me as I brainstorm my next book idea, Project Crown, which I feel like I could come up with so many more interesting titles than that, but Project Ari doesn't sound quite right because it's not just hers. The Crown doesn't sound the best either. So that's the working project title. It will probably evolve from there, and stay tuned because I definitely will be delving more into this book. But I actually gotta edit my book that I'm writing right now. When Crystallize is out to my beta readers, this will be what I'm working on next. Trust. I'm so excited. Okay, anyway, comment down below let's comment down below like a golden heart if you watched to this point, so that way I know you've like watched to the end. And also tell me all about your current book ideas, your current book projects. What's an idea that's been plaguing your mind? Or if you're not as much into writing, what has been a current book that you've been reading? Because I need to get back into reading too. But anyway, thanks for watching. Have a great day. Bye!